Hey everybody, welcome to my video. Today it's one of my 5 things videos. That's right, every time the month has 5 weeks in it, the 5th week we get a 5 things video. Today we're going to do 5 blues techniques, 5 different techniques that you can use to bring the blues to your ukulele. And every single one of these you'll find players using almost all the time. They're pretty common techniques. Some of them you may already know, but some of them you may not. So let's start with number 1, the shuffle. Now the shuffle is pretty much the basic where we're adding a 6th note on top of our instrument. Now I'm using my Anue Mango tenor, my signature model, Manitoba Hal model. And I'm tuned with a low G, so I've got my G, C, E, A, but I've got the low G. You can do this with a high G. It's not important that it's low, it's just I'm letting you know so that if you don't have that, you don't get panicky that it doesn't sound the same. So the shuffle is pretty obvious. You start with your C chord and you're going to add an A note, which is the 2nd fret on the G string, and we're also going to use the 3rd fret on the G string. We're going to do a nice pattern where we're doing a down-up stroke, just like this with our right hand. We're going to go down, then we're going to add that A note there, just like that. That's the basic shuffle. Then we add the extra note to it, the 7th shuffle. It goes like this. So 2nd, 3rd, 2nd, open, 2nd, 3rd, open. So you see what I'm doing there? And that's basically the shuffle. Now, there's different shuffles for different chords. You want to always find the 6th note of the scale. So when you're looking at an F chord, for example, you count up from F. F, G, A, B, C, D is your 6th note. So you're going to add that D note, which is the 2nd fret, and so on. You're going to do that with every chord that you work on, and you're going to find the notes. So the secret to being successful with the shuffling is knowing your notes so that you can add those notes effectively on it. Some people like to add any note and call it a shuffle. And while I hate to be the guy who is like, no, it ain't. Like Sunhouse used to say that young people would call add the word blues to something, call it such and such a blues, and it ain't the blues. The shuffle is a specific technique. You have to add the 6th note of the key that you're, the chord, pardon me, that you're working on. So if you're not doing that, anything else you're doing is just rocking a chord from one note to another. It is not a shuffle. It can be fun, it can be interesting, it can even be effective, but it's not a shuffle. So have fun with that, learn your shuffles, and that's the first technique. The next technique we're going to talk about is called the rake. The rake is a style of playing where, as a player, you start by strumming a chord and then you add some melody notes while you're still strumming. So, for example, if I'm playing in C, I'm going to use my 4-fingered C. This is at the 3rd fret, and what I'm covering is the 5th fret with my ring finger on the G string, the 4th fret on the C string with my middle finger. My 1st finger is covering the 3rd fret on the E and A strings. That's that chord there. Now, a rake is, I'm assuming that this is my chord. I'm playing in C still, but instead of playing this whole chord shape, I'm going to grab the 3 here, which is kind of like I'm playing a C minor. And the trick here is, because the G works open in C, you know, when we're playing a C chord, our G is open, I get to keep that open. So what we're doing here, I'm going to move my camera just a little so you get a little extra view. What we're doing here is I'm strumming down, and instead of plucking individual notes, I strum across all of them, but I stay in this little box between the 3rd and the 5th fret, and I'm just hammering on and moving notes, or hammering on placing notes. I'm not even hammering them, I'm just placing them. And this is what's called a rake. Now, it's not specifically the 3rd and the 5th fret notes that matter. The rake is the fact that I'm constantly strumming over the chord while I'm adding extra notes to it. And what I'm trying to do here is I'm not trying to strum everything open so that you don't hear it. Like I'm kind of muting the other strings a little bit with my left hand and just focusing on the string I'm hearing, so that really what you hear is the strum and the note that's supposed to pop out. That's what you're looking for. Now, Stevie Ray Vaughan used a lot of raking in his technique. It's a very good rhythmic technique, especially when you're the only player in a groove. Excuse me. When you're the only player keeping down the rhythm and you want to add some melody and some riffing to what you do, a rake is one of the best ways to get there, because you get this, you know, hey, baby, don't you want to go? Hey, don't you want to go? Like that same old place, that's my sweet home, Chicago. So that's the rake and the shuffle put together in one pattern. So it's really a neat way to increase your vocabulary. Now, the notes that I'm picking for the rake, that come from the C minor pentatonic scale, because I'm staying in C. You probably, if you're going to start doing rakes, you're going to want to learn your scales. Just a warning there for you. Now, the third technique we're going to talk about is called the climb. Now, the climb is, well, whatever. The climb is this. The climb is moving your chords up and down chromatically to increase your groove. So, for example, if I'm coming from a G7 chord, I'm adjusting myself here. If I'm coming from a G7 chord, I'm going to use this G7 here, which is where I'm covering the 4th fret on my G string, the 5th fret on my C string, the 3rd fret on my E, and the 5th on my A. And I'll put a picture up there in the corner. This G7, if I'm going from this G7 to F7, instead of just going, I will stop partway down in the F sharp, and there. That's a climb. It's a climb down, a descension. The same goes for up. And so you can do a thing where you're climbing up to a chord. So for example, if you're playing a shuffle, you can see that this note is rising up to that G7, right? So there's a way to get a climb into that note, to that chord, I mean. And you can do the same with, there's an F7, right? You've got our D7 chord, E7, F7. So instead of just playing our F7 here, you've got it here. So you can do this. So by climbing into notes and climbing out of notes, you get this nice movement that really makes your playing seem a whole lot more detailed, even though you're still playing C, F, and G. That's the secret right there. So I encourage you to play around with movable chords and get into climbing, things that you can move up and down the neck, because it makes your playing a lot more interesting. So the fourth technique we're going to look at today is called the stop. Now, stop is, it's a stop. That's all it is. But the careful, judicious use of the stop makes a huge difference to your rhythm. So for example, in the song Kansas City, you know, going to Kansas City, here I come. I'm going to Kansas City, here I come. Got some crazy kind of women there, I'm going to get me one. Well, I might take a boat, I might take a train, but if I have to walk, I'm going to get there just the same. Now those are stops right there. I'm going to stop, and I stop the music, but the melody keeps going. I might take a boat, I might take a train, but if I have to walk, I'm going to get there just the same. I'm going to Kansas City, here I come. Now, James Brown used a lot of stops. He used to get the band to hit 1, 2, 3 times, and you could do that. You know, you can go, I might take a boat, I might take a train, I might, you know. Now, I find with stops, downstrokes are the most effective. As soon as you start coming back, you kind of lose a little of the emphasis, but play around with it. Stops are fun, and they really add a lot of emphasis to your blues and your groove. All right, and the last technique, number 5, is called the double stop. Now, the double stop is a riffing technique that is used by soloists all over the place Chuck Berry used to use a lot of double stops. Elmore James used a lot of double stops. A lot of blues players do. A double stop is where you got two notes and you play them together, but that's all you play. Now, I don't know why it's called a double stop, because you don't necessarily stop. But for example, if I'm playing a C, if I'm playing in the C, I want to use a C5 chord, which is the 3rd fret on my E string and the 3rd fret on my A string together. That whole chord, when I strum it, is called a C5. But those first two notes that I'm fretting are actually what you would use in the double stop. And Chuck Berry used a lot of these. And that's kind of it right there. So maybe it's called a double stop because you're stopping the chord at those two notes. I don't know. Anyway, the trick with this is they use a lot of sliding motion. So it starts usually 1 fret up and slides in. So a double stop can be a very effective way to break up your song. So for example, hey, baby, don't you wanna go? Say, hey, baby, don't you wanna go? Back to that same old place, that's my sweet home, Chicago. I might take a boat, I might take a train. And if I have to go, I'm gonna get there just the same. I'm going to Kansas City, Kansas City, here I come. Like that same old place, that's my sweet home, Chicago. Ain't nothing but a hound dog crying all the time. You ain't nothing but a hound dog crying all the time. Ain't nothing but a rabbit, Lord, and you ain't no friend of mine, yeah. Oh, you ain't no friend of mine. So there you have it. 5 techniques that can enhance your blues: the shuffle, the rake, the climb, the stop, and the double stop. If you learn all of those and start experimenting with how you can place them in different keys, I guarantee you, you're going to sound more and more like a blues guy every day. So have yourselves a great day, and we'll see you next week.